Hello! Hello and welcome back to Middara. This is going to be an intermission because we basically, from what I understand, finished chapter 1, and after I just looked ahead real quick, I didn't really read too much. It's just okay, there's 5 pages to get through. So that's why this is going to be an intermission. If you haven't noticed anything unusual, because we got a new camera up here, which means we now have 2 side cameras. Which for Middara we're just going to be using the 2 cameras, but for the third camera, it's basically for Arkham Horror or the LCGs. I gotta put this right here, and then I'll have 2 that shows the actual player cards, which will be much better to do and have a lot more room to do things. So, also I got a new pack for Middara. The Psych Apostrophism of Love. I didn't particularly want this particular one. There was another one I wanted, but I got her because I was on eBay for pretty cheap. So let's go ahead and read. We're supposed to go to Getting Cocky because we finished it. Let's say Getting Cocky. All right. Oh, and then also she also added when you get Psych, you get her as an adventurer. You also get her as a loyal Esper, I think. I'm not sure if you can actually summon her or not, or an opposing center loyal Esper. And then there's also item cards that she can find, which are wandering cards, which I don't know where I put them. I put them in here. So, and then as wandering cards, they're basically, you can find them, you just can never buy them. So it's possible to find these new cards, which is kind of cool. But let's go ahead and start with Getting Cocky after we beat this. Alright, here we go.
I told you guys we were ready for this. Nightingale pushed aside the last of the monstrous remains. The sound of strange footfalls now moved away from them. We're like the best team ever. Pretty sure that deserves a round of high fives. Nobody mocked her enthusiasm this time. Expressions of satisfaction and pride were universal. Even Rook looked proud. I guess you were right, Nightingale. This wasn't such a bad idea after all. Remy returned Nightingale's grin. We're gonna be heroes.
Continue to Strange Pedestal 37. Now this giant head thing. Oh, that's right there. Alright. Now we go back to a strange pedestal. This is 15 minutes long.
A strange pedestal. Nightingale gingerly picked her way through the hall, being careful not to make a sound. A pair of massive double doors blocked the way, made of wood so old it seemed halfway petrified. Someone was shouting from within. Nightingale felt lucky that the intruder was making enough of a racket to find in the dim light. Nightingale was certain it was the thief. Who else would be down in the vaults? She peeked through the partly open double doors and leaned around the edge of the doorway so she wouldn't alert the thief to her presence. Upon seeing what was in the room, Nightingale immediately froze. She fought back the urge to scream, which turned halfway into a gag as she stared at the abomination that filled the center of the room. It looked like a head 30 feet tall with skin rotting and pale. Strands of matted, oily hair clung to its clammy flesh, and grasping limbs sprouted from random points along the scalp. They were like dozens of thick arms and fingers that writhed like a centipede that had been cut in half with a shovel. The room was large and mostly devoid of furnishings, except for some sort of pedestal that sat on the far side of the grotesque monstrosity. I have the right of salvage. A man stood with his back to her, separating her from the monster. Nightingale mused that this must be the thief. He was attempting to claim whatever was on the pedestal behind the horrible creature. He sounded far more confident than she would have been. You can't stop me. The creature laughed, throwing back a jaw that hinged open to reveal more appendages. Every pale digit had become a row of glittering teeth. It wasn't laughter as ever Nightingale had known it before. It was like the last breath of the dying, shifted octaves lower and much louder. I am Hogrifar, Lord of the Vaults. I have right to every treasure here. Not this one, the thief said, stepping forward. Curiosity fought against her fear. and Nightingale moved closer to get a better look at what the thief was trying to steal. Atop the pedestal, she could see a rather benign-looking shard of rock. Its faint glow reflected a red hue from the cushion it was on. It looked as if it was placed deliberately, but by whom she didn't know. "You have no use for such an artifact," the thief started yelling now. "Let me pass, and I'll make it worth your while." The creature-hographer furrowed its obscene brow as if contemplating the offer. Then something tumbled across the ground. Nightingale accidentally kicked a stone across the floor, and the creature looked in her direction, its single gigantic eye fixing on her. Her heart seized in her chest as the monster's apparent amusement turned to anger. "Coward! You couldn't face me alone? This thief is less than a worm." It raised one of its massive tooth-filled mouths at the end of an elongated finger as thick as Rook's torso. Nightingale tensed. "Get back!" Her shout came too late. There was a harsh tearing sound like she might have heard in a butcher's shop as Hographer ripped open the man's belly. Blood sprayed through the air with an audible gurgle. The thief fell. "No!" Her body moved on instinct, and before she knew what was happening, she was sprinting towards his limp figure. "Get away from him!" Her friends jumped into action as well. She felt a surge of pride filling her, knowing that she hadn't been abandoned. The monster swept aside their blows like it might an annoying insect. Their attacks slid like water from its hide without effect. Rook went slamming backward as a massive finger knocked the air from his lungs and sent him tripping over himself. Remy and Zeke weren't far behind, each sent flying with casual ease. Nightingale charged, leaping with her weapon outstretched, but it caught her in midair with a swipe, smacking her across the middle and tossing her through the air like a child's toy. She was only dimly aware of striking the ground. Her weapon was sent spinning out of her grip as she slid to a stop. Behind her, the sound of cruel laughter echoed through the chamber. Nightingale didn't lie still for very long. She felt her tail twitch, her limbs spasming one at a time as she regained control. Gurgling breaths came from somewhere so close she could almost feel the heat. Nightingale fought the pain, forcing herself to sit up. The world was still spinning, but it was clear enough to see what had happened. The monstrous Hographer had knocked her towards the injured thief. There was more blood than Nightingale had ever seen in her life. It pooled on the ground around him. The torn threads of his shirt mixed freely with the wound. For a moment, time stood still as she tried to process the image. She crawled weakly forward along the ground, reaching the thief. "I'm coming," she squeaked, her voice coming out in a slur. She clawed her way through the grime, fumbling through her gear with one shaking hand. "Damn you! Get away from me!" He coughed, blood pouring from his lips as he tried to shove her vainly away with one hand. "Get away!" Nightingale ignored him. The man was obviously in shock. He didn't know what he was saying, and there was no chance she would listen. "I'll stop the bleeding or something." She searched desperately for the source of the blood pooling from his wound. She pushed but couldn't manage enough pressure to do anything but cover her hands in warm, thick fluid. The man's skin was pale, his insides open and exposed. Every second brought another pulse of blood, some splattering on her bare skin. Get away!" The man's breathing was slowing to a dull rattle. He pushed on one of her legs, but the gesture was as futile as her attempt to stem the blood. "I'll help you," she insisted again, leaning closer. There was probably healing magic for a wound this terrible, magic that someone who'd actually earned a spot in the demiurge would know. The word came out in a hoarse rattle, bubbles foaming at the thief's mouth as he gasped. He suddenly shook one last time, then finally fell still. Nightingale watched him die. There was a moment of silence. She didn't notice that her friends were still stunned from their blows. She didn't think about the horrible monster behind her. Nothing made sense as she stared down at the body. Then something started to hiss and bubble in front of her. The corpse wasn't still. Something darker than blood seemed to be leaking from his face. Nightingale pushed away from him, blood still coating her arms and soaking into her clothes. A few moments proved the tar-like ooze was not leaking. It was clawing its way out, pouring out of the man's mouth and piling up atop him. It surged from behind his eyes, out his ears, and out the pores in his skin. She only had a second to see it. The black mass sloshed about within itself, and with each movement, strange lights flickered from within. It had dozens of eyes, no two alike in size or shape. They seemed to move freely, pointing directly at objects instead of pivoting to face them. Within a second, they were all pointing at her. Nightingale tried to scream as the thing surged towards her. She put her arms up, but it didn't hinder the ooze at all. It had no limbs, yet the whole thing latched onto her face like the malicious pseudopod of a feeding amoeba. Fierce cold boiled at her skin where it touched, so cold it burned. Her scream choked in her throat as the monster pried her jaws open wider, filling her mouth. The seeping tar sucked into her eyes and she could feel the pressure of it pushing into her skull. The pain was overwhelming, screaming throughout her body. The darkness consumed her vision and her mind until consciousness faded. Rook moaned. Despite the pain making every movement stiff, he knew he had to act. The creature was still here, and it could easily kill him. He had to get up. He had to help his friends. He rose, grunting. In the darkness, his surroundings seemed to blur, yet one shape formed before the others. It was Hographer, looming in the murky shadows. Far worse, it was holding Nightingale in the air by one of her horns. Rook couldn't speak, instead fumbling for his weapon. He didn't dare do anything sudden, lest he startle the monster into killing his friend. Hographer held Nightingale very near between two grotesque fingers, inspecting her closely. "Where did you go? Acquired a new host? Perhaps trying to hide inside of another body?"
Oh, jeez.
It was searching Nightingale's face with a massive eye. Rook tensed, readying for a vain attempt at an attack. After a few seconds, the monster started laughing again, and Nightingale shook vigorously in its grasp. "Damned fool," Hographer called, voice so loud that the ground seemed to shake. "She just saved my life from that parasite." Hographer seemed to be smiling through the appendages leaking from its mouth. Rook had no time for rational thought. He charged, crossing the room far faster than his size made him look capable of, lifting a massive weapon in both hands. Hographer didn't see him coming, nor did it turn towards the sound of Rook's pounding steps. Rook struck as hard as he could, aiming straight for the joint on one of the creature's fingers. The half-rotten flesh parted, spraying foul-smelling slime. Hographer screamed, its voice sounding continually shriller as it went. Nightingale landed with a sick-sounding thump at Rook's feet. Rook didn't slow as he scooped her into his arms, leaning towards the smallest, shortest door in the room. "Follow me," Rook bellowed towards Zeke and Remy. Despite their recent beating, the two were both on their feet and weren't far behind him. They ran for their lives. Rook couldn't have said where he went. At each fork and junction, he picked a direction at random, so long as the way through looked clear. The ground shook behind them, and Hographer's terrible screeching still sounded in his ears. Rook ran until his gut started to ache, oblivious to anything but the placement of his feet and Nightingale in his arms. The sound of pursuit faded to a distant echo, and only then they could stop. Rook dropped to his knees, lowering Nightingale to the ground in front of him. Zeke was first to speak, his voice so casual it sounded forced. "Did either of you catch the way we came?" No." Remy dropped to the ground beside Rook, nudging at Nightingale's cheek with one hand. To Rook's great surprise, Nightingale started coughing. She whimpered like an injured animal. Her eyes opened, and for a quick instant they seemed cloudy. "What happened?" she moaned. "Are you all right?" Rook asked, his voice low. "Are you kidding?" Nightingale shook her head once as though trying to shake water out of her ears. "What the hell was on that pedestal that was worth fighting a monster like that? And what was that horrific dark creature that came out of the dead thief?" Everyone gave her a strange look before Rick asked, "Something came out of the thief? What do you mean something came out of the thief? I only saw the giant head Hographer." Nightingale shook her head trying to remember, but it was all a blur. "Oh God, I'm not sure." "Yeah, well, we have bigger problems to worry about now." Zeke gestured around the little room, some kind of old storage area off the main hall by the look of it. "We're lost. I was trying to keep track of where we went, but I don't have a goddamn clue anymore. That thing..." "We get it," Remy sighed. "This place goes down as deep as the towers go high. That's what they say. Thousands and thousands of rooms, and at least one of them has a gigantic monster that's probably looking for us right now." Zeke offered Nightingale his hand and helped her stand. She swayed on her feet, but only a little. "You've got any smart ideas, Rook?" Zeke pulled what looked like his last crumpled cigarette out. Rook sighed. "I've got one idea, but you guys have to be cool about it. Nobody freak out." "Nobody freak out?" Nightingale still looked drained, but there were a few bright twinges around her cheeks. You serious, Rook? After meeting, what did it call itself? Hographer? Okay, right. He reached up to his neck and removed the amulet that hung there. Suri? He didn't say it so much as he thought it, calling out through the strange amulet with focused will to a place he never should have touched. Yes, Rook? As usual, the answering voice came almost instantly, created from nothing, yet audible by everyone nearby. You sound upset. I am, Rook said to the empty air all around them. Do you have the strength to manifest now? The reply came with a little reproach. There are 3 others in the room with you. When we first spoke, I told you my kind was forbidden in your world, and both of us would be in great danger if your kind learned of our friendship. Rook glanced once at each of his friends in turn, Nightingale still looking like she'd been wrung out, Zeke forcing himself to be calm, and Remy was shaking with nervous fear. He sighed. I trust them, Suri. We need your help. As you wish. Light began to glow from the amulet, a magenta that overwhelmed the gloom and grew bright enough to radiate through the open doorways around them. Rook was numb to the wonder by now, though he couldn't miss the shocked expressions his friends had as the light grew so bright it seemed to take solid form. Rook knew little of Suri. Every time they had been together, she had taken this shape, greenish and vaguely human, with a body of radiant energy that blurred into swirling light the lower you looked. Her hair was electric blue and waved as though in an invisible wind. Whoa! Zeke's cigarette hung limply from his mouth as his eyes widened. Hi! Suri bounced on nothing, though she never got more than a few feet from Rook. The amulet continued to glow, though it had dimmed down to something far more tolerable. Everybody, this is Suri. Rook waved towards his friends as he introduced them. The spirit darted, a little nearer to each one as he named them, examining each from head to foot. She didn't offer to shake hands or anything else similarly polite. How did... Rook cut Zeke off with a tired gesture. Later, he turned, fixing his eyes on the glowing spirit. Suri, we're completely lost down here. Can you help us find a way out? Remy gasped as Suri vanished. Did she just leave us? She said with a concerned look. Rook shook his head. It's complicated to explain. If she left us, the amulet wouldn't be glowing. Before he could explain further, Suri returned in a bright flash of purple light. I found the way, Suri grinned, pointing with one hand at a nearby open door. A glowing trail formed in that direction. Best get moving.
A Way Out, page 32. Okay, so I did have Suri. I thought maybe, since we didn't have any talk about Rook or Suri, I was assuming that he was get it here, but no, he had her. So yeah, okay, so we go to A Way Out. 2 minutes, and I may as well show this real quick. Suri is on his page on the top right. Yep. All right.
A Way Out. Your friends are good at this. Suri glided along in front of Rook as they made their way through the ruined halls. It seemed the closer they were to the surface, the more it crumbled away, eaten by time and air, and corroded into crumbling metal or chalk-like rock. Yeah, Rook still had a weapon within reach if he needed it, but wasn't holding it ready anymore. So far, they had managed to avoid anything that might try to stop them from leaving the vaults. In fact, they saw nothing more dangerous than occasional stray vermin. It seemed the lesser creatures of the upper vault had learned to stay away, probably due to Hographer's nearby presence. Thanks for the directions. We'll have to bring a map next time we go exploring, Remy said. Maybe next time we can pick somewhere safer to adventure. We could help innkeepers deal with the rats in their basements, maybe. Inquiry? Suri didn't meet Remy's eyes so much as she watched her wings. Do the mortals of this realm routinely invoke the help of skilled professionals to get them out of minor problems they could have solved on their own? Wouldn't involving experienced instituted graduates be an unwise investment of your time? No, Zeke grunted. On Earth they did. People on Middara usually have more sense. Zeke left a trail of smoke behind him. Rook wondered where this new cigarette had come from, but took it as a good sign. They were recovering from their experience, except maybe Nightingale. Her skin was strangely pale, and she took every spare moment to rest that she could. Suri slowed a little as she considered Zeke's words, then shrugged. It was one of the first gestures she had learned to imitate, though Rook still wasn't sure if it meant the same thing to her. This is the way out. The security bar on the other side is unlocked, so you should be able to open it. She gestured at a strange section of wall where intricate metal clamps anchored to a round metal door. There had been words written here once, but Rook couldn't make them out anymore. They pushed together, and the rusting door squeaked slowly open, letting them out into the ground surrounding the white spires. Zeke led the group towards his family manor, and nearly 20 minutes later they had arrived at the Zhang house, a large white building Zeke called home.
Continue to Dark Passenger, page 4. Dark Passenger. Alright. Yeah, man. A dark passenger.
A dark passenger. Nightingale collapsed onto the ground, pressing her face against it for a few seconds. She was fairly certain she'd never been happier to be away from adventure in her life. We made it! Thank God! She let out an exhausted sigh. Behind her, Suri's voice was barely a whisper. What is this place? It seems to be humming with magical energy. Zeke moved to lock the door behind them with a loud click, then turned towards Suri. My family uses it as a dorm for their kids while they attend the Institute. I've been told it was already built into the foundation of the rock when this land was claimed. It's supposed to have various magical enchantments to keep us safe. It seems it just might. Suri floated gently past Nightingale, looking between each of Rook's friends. It was very nice to meet you all. I don't think I've ever seen so much of your world at once. Perhaps it will happen again. Maybe, Zeke began, but the spirit didn't linger to hear it. There was a faint pop and a flash of purple light. The place she'd been was empty, and Rook's amulet ceased to glow. Sorry about that. Suri's a little oblivious to common courtesy. Rook offered his hand to Nightingale. Are you all right? Yeah. Nightingale took the offered hand, rising again. It was more than a little strain on her body, but she managed not to sway. I think I just need some rest. We should visit the castle first. Rook watched her, looking concerned. Zeke and Remy were watching her too. Your father has excellent doctors. After what happened... Nothing happened! Nightingale found herself tensing, her tail snapping once behind her. Even as she said it, she saw a brief image of black ichor boiling from the dead thief's mouth. Really? You mentioned that something had come out of the thief. Some kind of dark creature? Rook looked from Remy to Zeke. Did either of you see what happened to Nightingale? Nah. Zeke looked down, frowning. After that thing knocked me back, it gets a little fuzzy. Remy nodded. My dumb wings were in the way. I didn't get up again until I heard her scream. Nightingale could only remember a strange amorphous shape sprouting towards her after she tried to save the dying thief. She shivered, glancing down at the ruins of her dress. It was brown and crusty with dirt and dried blood. She tried to push the image from her mind. That thing! It called itself Hographer, right? You must have hit me first, that's all. You're fine, I'm fine. She was shaking her head. How about we don't go anywhere near my father tonight, Rook? Remember, he's the reason I went into the damn vaults in the first place. All right, Rook sighed. I'm not sure where else we would go, though. You could crash here. Zeke gestured at the living room with a lit cigarette. We've got this whole mansion and everything. Might as well use a few of the extra rooms. You too, Remy. After a night like this, you probably need as much sleep as the rest of us. Perfect, Nightingale nodded, forcing more enthusiasm into the response than she really felt. The next hour passed in a blur to Nightingale. She ducked away first to wash off all the blood and change into clean clothes. After that, she ate some leftover soup as Zeke prepared a few spare rooms for their use. Nightingale fell asleep nearly instantly. However, it was not a restful night. Nightingale dreamed of the white vaults where the floor stretched away to an endless darkness, and an alien monstrosity of writhing limbs guarded something she wanted. Hografar was there, its proportions even more hideous than she remembered. The shadows of its disparate parts writhed, all reaching for her. Nightingale watched herself try in vain to save the thief, watched him die before her eyes. Something even worse than the freakish Hographer poured from the corpse and latched onto her face. Its body a hideous mass of swirling eyes and mouths and teeth. Eventually, she saw herself collapse, overwhelmed by the agony she remembered quite well. Her dream self's eyes opened, staring at her. There was something dark behind them, an alien intelligence anathema to life as she knew it. Nightingale woke with a start, shooting up right in the gigantic four-poster. The early light of dawn streamed in from one window, filling the room with its glow. Something reached for her shoulder, blocking out the light. Nightingale jerked violently away, twisting off the bed and landing with a pained thump on the floor. She came back up a second later, panting with her weapon in hand, all trace of drowsiness gone. There was nothing there. Nightingale took a deep breath to calm herself. She set her weapon down finally, then made her way downstairs. The kitchen was busy, though not with servants or staff. Instead, she was more than a little surprised to see Remy, Rook, and Zeke already waiting. "Hey, Knight." Zeke raised a spatula in mock salute. "Feeling better?" "Yeah." Nightingale didn't meet his eyes as she lied, looking around at the mess. Eggs and flour were everywhere, along with other stains she couldn't easily identify. "Did something blow up?" "Yes," Zeke began. "No." Remy and Rook answered at exactly the same time, both looking abashed. Rook glared once at Remy before continuing. "We had some disagreement about whether animism could be used to make an omelet." Remy wiped a sheen of slime away from her face with a cloth, then tossed it onto the counter beside her. "Turns out it wasn't a good idea." Zeke scooped a fresh and completely inanimate omelet out of a pan and onto a waiting plate. "After yesterday, we weren't going to get you until everything was ready. Did the explosion wake you?" "Nah," Nightingale grinned. She helped straighten things up, then the four of them sat down to eat. It was only after she had eaten her portion and the scraps left over from everyone else that Nightingale realized just how hungry she'd been. As they were finishing up, someone knocked on the door, and Zeke left to deal with it. He returned a moment later with a familiar figure just behind him. "Khufu!" Nightingale was up in an instant, practically bouncing with energy. She loped over and hopped up around him for a friendly hug. "What are you doing here?" Khufu pried her off gently, looking a little stern. "Your father sent me. You're urgently needed back at the castle." He looked between them. "Zeke, you've been called for as well." Zeke and Nightingale exchanged a worried look. Khufu ignored their exchange. "You're the new knight, right?" Khufu had to look up a little to meet Rook's eyes. "You too." "Oh, you guys are so screwed," Remy drawled with a worried tone. "I bet they found out what happened last night." Khufu turned, facing Remy with obvious confusion. "What? What do you mean? What happened?" Remy looked away, one of her wings twitching. Never mind. In either case, I'm not royalty and I'm not Nightingale's knight. I'm sure your family won't want me to tag along." Nightingale bit her lip, considering. It probably wasn't a good idea to antagonize her father after being summoned for discipline. She darted over, hugging Remy briefly. "I don't care." She was smiling at Remy now. "Please come with us. Forget what my father wants. I want you there." "Oh, okay." It was hard to tell if Remy looked nervous or relieved. "It's not like I've got anywhere else to be, now that we've graduated and all." "The sooner we leave, the better." Khufu glanced back at the hallway he came from. He looked a little worried now. "King Balthazar didn't say what this was about. He only said that I had to fly here as fast as I could." "I've got a pretty good idea what it's about," Nightingale groaned, running one hand through her unruly hair. So much for having enough time to get ready. "Let's just go. Waiting for him to get even angrier isn't going to make it any better."
Continue to the Arson Castle, page 42. Alright, Arson Castle.
The Arson Castle. Arson Castle was just on the outskirts of the city, a lone monolith in the center of the city's mysterious lake. As they crossed the imposing bridge, there was only a trickle of those with official business coming and going. Remy realized how different it looked up close and in the light of day. She looked over at Rook, who seemed just as awestruck as she felt. "I guess I'm gonna have to get used to coming here," Rook muttered, staring off at the distant castle. Remy followed his eyes and found herself suddenly shivering. There was something about the castle, something she hadn't noticed before. Maybe it was the proportions. Most of the windows looked too large from this distance. The front doors might be massive and intimidating, but they were also directly in proportion with everything else. As they continued to cross the bridge, she refused to look over the side into the swirling water far below. Something was swimming around down there, Always circling. Always waiting. You and me both. Nightingale looked uncomfortable. You can tell it wasn't built by humans. They did their best to make it livable, but you can still tell. It was originally a fortress, not a castle, Rook nodded. It was in the middle of a lake. I bet tearing it apart and rebuilding it was pretty expensive, Zeke said, flicking the charred butt of a cigarette over the edge of the bridge and down into the moat. Let me do the talking, Nightingale said, her voice flat. What we got into was my fault. You tried to stop me, Rook, and the rest of you were against it too. My father can think whatever he damn well wants to about me, but I don't want this hurting you guys. If you say so, Rook said. Despite his words, Remy didn't think Rook was even going to consider Nightingale's instructions. They moved quickly up to the doors, where a pair of armed soldiers waited. Servants ushered them in, muttering deferentially to Nightingale and Zeke and not asking about the others. They were quickly brought into the throne room, where a meeting was already in session. The king and queen sat on their thrones, backs straight and expressions mask-like. Balthazar looked even more tense than he'd been at the party, and Kezia had bags under her eyes. They weren't alone either. Nightingale's brother and sister were there, along with Zeke's uncle Yoon and his mother Ida. With the way he behaved last night, Remy never would have thought Yoon would be at a royal gathering. How considerate of my little sister to grace us with her presence, Yol muttered, just loud enough for them to hear as they approached the thrones. We've only been waiting, what, an hour? Balthazar did not reply. Instead he rose, clearing his throat. Welcome back, daughter, he nodded respectfully to Zeke. I'm relieved you made it also. This information concerns your family as well as ours. The king hardly seemed to see Rook standing there, though at least there was nothing judgmental in Balthazar's expression. For Remy, there was only confusion and a little annoyance on his face. Nightingale seemed to have noticed too, because she reached back, resting one arm on Remy's shoulder. Remy could see Nightingale's body tense under her father's gaze. Balthazar looked as though he were going to say something about Remy's presence, then he sighed and sat back down. There is little time, rulers and guardians of Alinea. Kezia and I should already be on the road. We cannot waste time with the formalities I would prefer. Ida cleared her throat, though she didn't rise from her seat. Your memorial hunt. I could never forget that day. Her voice was more than a little strained. Balthazar bowed his head slightly in Kezia's direction. I will bring the most glorious trophy yet in Lo's memory, Lady Ida. You have my word. She sighed. I'm sure he would have been flattered. Unfortunately, this year's hunt has come at an inopportune time, Balthazar continued. He looked to Kezia, seating himself again on the throne. He sat back down and Kezia rose. The queen was every bit Balthazar's match for confidence, her voice clear and loud in the mostly empty throne room. You are all aware of the growing tension between Alinea and our nearest neighbor, the Empire of Brahma. Not really, Nightingale interrupted. I know they've hated us since Alinea was founded, but I don't know why, or why it always seems to be getting worse. Kezia turned towards Nightingale, but didn't seem angry to have been interrupted. The details would take time we don't have to explain. Suffice it to say that Brahma has always claimed Alinea as its territory, but never used it. When we declared our independence, they failed to recognize us as a state. Yol spoke up from his chair. Brahma is larger and more powerful than Alinea. The best intelligence we have suggests their soldiers outnumber ours 10 to 1. They have their own version of the Demiurge too, a cabal of sorcerers and mercenaries called the Grim Deacons. The initiation rites alone would leave you scared. That's enough, Kezia interrupted. The peace envoy will be arriving within the month. Yol will conduct the negotiations and attempt to alleviate tensions before they escalate things. The peace envoy will be arriving within the month. Yol will conduct the negotiations and attempt to alleviate tensions before they escalate things. Yol? Why Yol? Ida Zhang's voice was a matter of fact, her arms folded. Take this as no slight to your son, but Yol is incapable of handling such delicate matters. He's hot-headed. Yol simply nodded at the remark, unfazed by the comment. Kezia threw her a sideways look. Ida, I have no choice. I have confidence that he'll do fine. His work at delegating peace in Fair Edge has been commendable. You mean Shayla's work in Fair Edge, Ida said, glancing sideways towards Nightingale's sister. Shayla stood. Yol and Nalia have proven themselves more than capable at diplomacy. If it wasn't for them, I might be on the gallows in Fair Edge right now. Speaking of Nalia, where is she? Ida tapped her fingers rhythmically on the chair she sat in. My wife has left to Fair Edge. The Wolfric family has requested her presence as a formality. We're playing along, Yul said calmly. Ida relaxed a little. Kezia, it should be you who delegates the peace envoy. You could sell a king his own castle. If you're not going to be here, that must mean you're leaving to the west. Unfortunately, yes, Kezia said with a look at Ida. Remy's friends looked as confused as she felt. Remy looked between the two noble ladies, trying to read whatever silent conversation had passed between them. We don't have high hopes for the negotiations. Brahmin knows they have us outmatched. We're afraid they may have come to offer terms we can't accept. I will not be attending the negotiations because I will be visiting some of our closest allies to secure military aid against the invasion we believe may be inevitable. Kezia will travel back to her parents' house in the far west. The Lucera family will aid us if the worst were to transpire, Balthazar said. I expect the rest of my family to be in attendance when the Romanian delegation arrives. He turned, glancing to the little cluster of chairs the Zhangs had pulled together. And as many of yours as can be available, Lady Ida. My son has Alenia's best interest at heart, but lacks the wisdom that comes of experience. Balthazar rose to his feet again, resting one hand on the hilt of the sword at his waist. Should Yul be killed, the succession will pass to Shaelis, then to you, Nightingale. May there be no need. Why am I here? Nightingale asked, and Balthazar paused. We keep our business private, he said. But you've graduated. You're part of the family now, Nightingale. That means you're part of our meetings from now on, too. Did you think politics was all about running our city? Prepare yourself, daughter. We fought for our kingdom, and we'll likely be fighting to keep it. He turned, offering his hand to Kezia. She took it, rose, and glared down at them. I expect all of you to be on your best behavior while we're gone. Nightingale nodded and watched as a retinue of soldiers followed closely behind her parents as they left the room. Remy found herself out in the courtyard of the castle. Together the group watched from a balcony as King Balthazar departed in an extravagant carriage. Zeke was smoking again, though he looked a little uneasy. Sometimes I wonder if going through the advancement made all of us lose our minds. Nobody realizes because we're all just as crazy. He looked away. Lo was my dad, but if it were me, I'd still put the memorial hunt on hold if it seemed like my kingdom was going to be invaded, you know? Must be an important hunt, Rook muttered. I'm not going to assume they don't know what they're doing. I guess there is more to it. I don't care what nefarious things my dad does on his lame hunt. I don't want to think about politics or war or any of that. We need to be more positive. Nightingale waved at the retreating carriage. Zeke raised an eyebrow. More positive? Like, how if everyone dies, you become queen? What? Nightingale put a hand on her hip. No, you dolt. I mean that my dad is gone. She still looked pale, yet some of her original energy seemed to be bubbling back. We graduated yesterday. We're full citizens of Middara. There's a whole world full of adventure out there, and the only one who might stop us is riding off in that carriage. Zeke nodded. I've meant to get on into Alenia proper. What's the point of being able to leave the Institute if we spend all our time at home? My family left me with some cash as a graduation present. Mine did too. Nightingale seemed to be getting more excited by the moment. I bet if we pulled it, we could have enough for new gear for all of us. Alenia's always been a hub for adventures. I bet we'll find some great stuff. Nightingale and Zeke pulled out small pouches and began counting how much gold they had. Nightingale's excitement was infectious. Even Rook's mind started turning. She seemed rather determined to get herself into danger on a...
Alright, hold up a second, because it says, here's the word. After recording your bonus, continue reading. Okay, we're going to continue this for a little bit.
Some new gear might be just what he needed to be a better knight. Could be fun, he agreed. And when we're done? Nightingale hardly even seemed to hear him. We'll have everything we need to finish exploring the vaults.
Alright, so yeah, it didn't tell us to stop during there, but yeah. So we're going to put in more gold. First off, I forgot to get the gold over here from what we got last time. 8. We have 72, 8, we have 80, 85, 89. So we currently have 89. Party gains bonus depending on how much XP the adventurers have earned, including the XP they spent. So we spent 3 XP. We have 8. At 8 XP, we only get 10 gold. Had we get less, we get even more gold. So we had 89, and now we have 99. Weird, but yeah. Alright.
Stared. It took a moment to realize what she was suggesting. Are you sure that's a good idea? I mean, Zeke said through a billow of smoke. We got the whole monster mash after us last time. Hographer probably hasn't forgotten about us. Rook cleared his throat. I admit I was curious last time, but we've seen it now. It's out of our league. Psst. Nightingale waved a dismissive hand, her tail swishing about behind her. We were just unprepared the first time. Think about it. Now that we know Hographer is down there, we can be much more careful. I haven't been able to stop thinking about what was on that pedestal.
So, just a quick pause. I've seen part 2 of Middara, and it actually has a figurine of Hographer. That's what they're saying? Yeah. So there's a figurine of Hographer. So I'm not sure we're going to fight her in part 1, but it looks like she's going to be, we're going to battle her in part 2. Whenever that's going to come out. Who knows?
Whatever it was has to be epic. I mean, some real purple color loot. I'm down. Remy's voice was so quiet it was almost a squeak. They all turned, Rook frowning. She cleared her throat, then continued. I mean, we'll have better gear. It's not like we couldn't get away from Hographer last time. Yeah! Nightingale embraced Remy, wrapping one arm around her shoulder. Rimdog gets it! Zeke extinguished his cigarette along the railing, flicking the butt over the side. It's a stupid idea, but I guess I'm down. After we spend some time in the city first. Yeah, buddy! Nightingale yelled as she slapped Zeke on the back. Then she turned to Rook. You don't have to come, she began. I know my father made you a knight, but I'm coming. Rook didn't wait for her to finish. We'll probably need Suri's help again to find our way around. And you wouldn't have her help without me there. That's more like it, Nightingale's grin returned. But first, let's go shopping.
All right. So, we're at the first story round. By any time the players are introduced to a story round, they go through all the steps listed on the story round. During the story rounds, you buy new items, spend XP, embark on side quests. Each player initiate a story round for the first time. A new unique weapon will be up for sale. So if you can't afford it now, you'll always come back later to get more gold from a side quest. Monsters in Middara can be difficult to kill. For this reason, we're prioritizing weapons over gear in most cases. If players cannot afford it, we're making them go to a side quest to earn the gold. Before continuing the main adventure. Okay, so you may spend gold and learn disciplines with XP. So let's go ahead and do that now. So let's just go ahead. We have 5 experience points per person. Now, Remy, I already know what Remy wants. So right now she has Mend. Let's kind of put her over here. She has Mend. And where is it? Where's the assemblage? Oh, it's subterfuge. Here is the assemblage. Alright. We want to get her to becoming a summoner. Right now she can heal. So we need to find a level 1 assemblage. We have Perfect Love, Enthusia. Is it over here too? No. Sanctuary, anytime an ally is within SOA can dodge. We don't need that. Dodge. Perfect Love, when an ally within SOI is dealt damage, you or a loyal Esper are dealt that much. Irresistible damage instead. Okay, so that's kind of cool. So Remy could actually take damage with someone around her. Forebode, anytime against you. Okay, Banished Knowledge, gains haste. We don't want that. What we want is the Familiar. Level 1 Familiar. Now, I'm not sure how much you guys can see on here. I don't think. Yeah. So it says level 3. But here's the thing. She already has a level 1 card. And if you try to buy another level 1 card, it costs an additional XP. So the XP is now 4 instead of 3. So we're going to do that here. So she spends 4 XP to get Familiar. That's Remy. She has 1 XP. Now, Familiar. After learning this, choose a familiar and place a card next to your adventure card. Your familiar cannot be changed. So, the game starts with 4 familiars. We have Tava, which gives her a +1 movement, which is really good. You can also flip, do not provoke break attacks until the end of your turn. That's pretty good, but Remy's already pretty good at moving around, so we don't want that. Yuza, exhaust. When you deal damage to an opponent, heal 1. And that's an exhaust. You can constantly do that. That's really cool. That's like constantly healing yourself. Flip it, you dodge and gain 1 SP. Remy is trying to be away from people. Analysm, which is actually what they talked about in the story, where they try to use analysm to blow up their cooking. So I think Remy was originally supposed to have analysm because she has a little pet familiar right down there, but she doesn't actually have it. But basically it gives her 4 health, which is really good, and basically throw purple. So basically she can do damage like throwing it's like a free throwing knife every turn, but I don't think it's okay. This is the one I want. Tristram Spirit. Exhaust. Follow-up. Deal physical damage equal to your highest level assemblage. So if we attack someone who doesn't really have armor, we can flip it and we can do 1 damage for free, and higher damage the more we level up our assemblage. But we can flip her, remove an effect from a figure within SOI. So basically this is, she can heal health, and with this we can heal effects. And like I said, effects kind of scare me, so I think we're going to go with that. So I already knew what we were going to do with Remy. Rook, Zeke, and Nightingale, I wasn't sure. Actually, I kind of know exactly what I'm going to do with Nightingale. And it's going to be in a martial, though she has a subterfuge one. Since we're getting a new level 1, it's going to consider to be 4 XP just like last time. So, what we want is Blade Works. This is what Zeke had in the beginning of the game. If you have 2 one-handed weapons, which we do, make an attack. And the reason why I want this, because follow through, she can basically spend extra SP to increase the damage to up to 10. But since she was always spending SP first to attack, she can only really spend 3. With Blade Works and follow through, we could like do 10 damage plus a free attack, and then she can use her ambitious if she has it or not. So that is I like that combo. So we're going to go ahead and take 4 off Nightingale, so she has 1 XP. Now, Zeke. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do for Zeke. We're going to look at the marshals first. I want to look at level 2s, which are 5 experience points, which we do have. So we can spend 5. Gigas Grip, that's basically allows us to you equip 2-handed weapons as 1-handed, which is actually kind of interesting with Zeke, so he can have a shield and a 2-handed weapon, but I do not know what they look like, so we're not going to get that right now. Onslaught, make an attack, it gains make an attack, and then it also gains make an attack. So you can attack 3 times as long as it's constantly for 3 stamina. That's not bad. Blood Rage, when you have damage equal to the last half, gain additional SP during your point recovery. That's pretty good, but I don't think he will be getting hit because he is a tank. But gain an extra SP when most of the time he's supposed to be dodging most of the time, not that. Okay, so maybe not Blood Rage. Whirlwind, make a step against each figure next to you. Okay, so basically attack everyone around you. Promise, gain X over X. Before attack, gain X to the attack roll. X is the amount of times you attack that target this turn. That's interesting if it's full attack, but yeah, that's only if you're able to attack a lot. That's maybe like Nightingale. Physically Perfected, passive. Gain X, where X is your highest martial, so he'll get +2 health. And the exhaust, and he gets follow up, gain 1 SP. That's actually not that bad. Get more defense. Mage Breaker, exhaust when dealing damage. Roll the opponent's casting die and add to the physical damage to attack. That's pretty good, but if I've read this online, if they don't have a casting die, then you can't really use it. But this is more for damage, but it's nice. Nemesis Enforcement. Opponent with an SOI gains the Nemesis Special Effect token. I do not know what that is. I've seen it in here. Nemesis. Right down here. Yeah, there's a Nemesis, but it doesn't tell me on that. Crap. So let's look in here what Nemesis does. Move, nimble. Doesn't tell me on the tags. Maybe it's... Hopefully it's back. Actually, here we go. Negative effects. Positive effects. Special effects. Attacks gain... Allies gain +1 against the Nemesis. You may never have more than one Nemesis token figure at a time. Okay. +1 attack rolls. That's basically going to help. That's really cool. I like that. That's a level 3. Crap. We're at level 3s now, so yeah, we can't do that. So, because basically it's like, as a tank, he's like everyone on him and everyone gets a bonus to attack. So Remy, Nightingale. So, let me look at this one more time. Giga Script, Blood Attack, Whirlwind, Promise. I prefer these two, where X is the highest, gain +1 SP. So, I think we're going to go the physically perfected, and that's because he gains more health, and you can gain XP maybe, but the health is going to help because we're having him as a tank, and that costs all his XP. So his XP is now at 0. All right. So now that gives him +2 to his health. Alright. Last person. And that's gonna be Rook. Rook, I have no idea. Let's go find where did I put that one? Sanctus. Here we go. No, Cure. Since he already has one cure, and his current cure, Gore Shot. Whoops! I just threw those things everywhere. That's fine. We can pick up those later. Rook has Gore Shot. Make damage equal to your current cure level, so we want more cure. Okay. Soul Steel. I'm just playing. I was currently playing Castlevania Harmony of Despair with my son, and so I'm playing Alucard with Soul Steel. So just seeing it in his voice. At the start of your turn, this is a passive. You and an ally may redistribute damage tokens between each other. That's kind of cool. So he's like, "All right, give me all the damage." And exhaust, cast spell thick equal to half your total damage. So that's like, give me more damage and I'll hurt them. And he has a little bit more health. So that might be something that's interesting. Root of the Mind. Inflict paralyze to someone. So we know if we paralyze someone, they can't move, but they get it back. So when you hit with an attack, gain a Val token. So I don't think we're going to use that because we're not really using the magic staff. When you deal damage +2 of the same type, limit 5. So we can have a bunch of Val's token, but I don't in dreams, so I'm not sure we're definitely going to use that. Bring the Shadows. Make a move. During this movement, you do not break attacks, and you may move through opponents with no penalty. You may not increase this movement with SP. Then cast a spell 6 with each figure you move through. Ignore an SOI and line of sight. Roll in your casting die, deal magic damage equal to the results, and can inflict darkness. That's kind of cool. And he's like buff enough to actually go through them, so that's actually kind of cool. Organic liquefy. Ooh. Exhaust. Roll one of your target's conviction dice, so they have to have a conviction dice. Deal damage equal to the results. You may deal 2 irresistible damage to deal additional magic equal ×2 your highest cure resistable, which is just like Core Shot, but with another one. So this is like gore shot, but they're casting against their conviction dice. Huh. I like that. Blood pack. When making an attack, you may deal yourself is down to remaining HP to add the same amount. That's only if we're gonna. He's not gonna attack with his magic staff melee, so we're not gonna use that. Blood toll. Deal yourself 2 hours damage, gains 2 XP. We don't need that at all because we're not. We have problems using our SP. So here's the thing. Let's see if we hit someone with Paralyze. Gain immunity Paralyze. Does he keep immunity Paralyze for every turn? So let's see. Might be an odd rule to look up. Paralyze. Until the end of the encounter. Yeah, so yeah, if we paralyze someone, it can only paralyze them once. So I'm not sure if we're gonna want that. I think I like this one. Organic Liquefy, because basically he can attack twice. Gore Shot, and then this one that also uses SP. Bring the Shadows pretty good. Let's look at Darkness. That's poison. You have -1 to defense, and you may not dodge. So that's actually kind of cool. So basically he goes through it, and basically we stop people from dodging. This is if we're going to hurt ourselves a lot. I don't think we're going to do that now. I like both of these. But I think we're going to do this one. Bring the Darkness. He's going to get he's going to go through enemies. He's going to hit and whatnot. So I think we're going to do this. Bring the Shadows. Organic Liquefy is kind of cool, just like everything else, but basically he's going to go through enemies, then hit him with Gore Shot. Alright. So, that's our discipline. So that cost him 5. Currently at 0. Alright. So what's next for our adventurers? In addition, you may trade enemy gear or party stash. I don't think we have anything in the party slashing right now. The store contains the following items for sale. After completing this step, return all items to their decks. 1 random mundane unique item. So let's look for that mundane unique item first. Where is it? Rare weapon, rare consumable. Where did I put those things? Okay. Mundane weapons. There's that. Mundane cores. Accessories, which we will go through. Not the consumables, is it? Because I know the consumables and the relics are all here. Yeah. Okay, so where did I put the uniques? Alright. Common weapon, don't need. Uncommon consumable. That's the item weapons from the enemies. Common consumables. Uncommon weapons. Rare consumables. Rare weapons. Or is it? Okay, that's why I was using it for that. Alright, this is all mundane. Mundane. Alright, so. All accessories. Explore. We could do a side quest later, but we're not going to do that. So we do side quests. They said we recommend Loa problems, or they attempt a bounty, or we go venture forth back to the main story. But we'll do that later. So our main. So I'm just gonna put this right here. Not really looking. Then the top one is what we find. And the top one is a bow. Bear of Justice. This actually could be good for Remy. So it's an orange and a yellow. If you haven't made a move action this turn, your attacks gain +1 attack. That's the same thing as her bow. Attacks made against opponent that dealt damage to an ally in your last turn gain +2 physical. Oh, so basically, if someone attacks one of our players, like it hits Zeke, then we can use it to gain +2. Oh, when we conflict, we're getting this. There's no way we're not. That's really good weapon. So. Let's put these away. So, that costs 50. So we have 49 left. I also wanted to get a an accessory. Let me look at accessories. The quiver. Since both Remy and Rook don't have accessories, Remy can have a quiver. You may equip an arrow on this as an item, though it does not take a relic slot. In addition, this arrow does not count as an arrow item for a limit of having one quiver item equipped. So we can re-roll. And so let's look at consumables and arrows. 'Cause I haven't really used those yet. It's considered a relic. Equip an arrow that does not take up a relic slot. When you make an attack, gain +1 to the range. You are limited to having one arrow item equipped. In addition, so we can have 2 arrows. And this one, True Flight arrows, is that you can't hit. So this is cost 45. So we would buy a quiver and a flight of arrows. And basically, only one we're upgrading would be Remy, which I think we need to, because her damage output isn't really that good. But we knew that. With this, I think we're going to be pretty decent. Oh, and there's the new Wandering Relic, but we can't use it because we can't buy it in the game. Where is another? Okay, here's another one. Really, we only have 2 mundane relics, probably. Okay, this one is also True Flight. So, doesn't matter, we can just get one. I feel like there would be another one, but I guess not. When you make an attack, gain +1 to the range. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get, we're going to buy Remy, the Bear of Justice, a quiver, and I want to make sure we get an accessory, because accessories are only going to make things worse. So, that's 50, 80, 95, so we have 4 gold left. And we're at page 47. That. So, maybe this isn't the end of the chapter. 66. Yeah, I guess so. Alright. So, Nightingale is infected with something. Oh, we can also sell the longbow, I forgot. So we have that. And now we have Quiver and True Flight. When you make an attack, reroll any single dice, except black. So Remy's pretty good. So we probably, next time we're going to do the side quest, choose one of the following, then proceed to the listed page. You may not choose a life if you already attempted. So we can only do it. We can only explore once. If you have no side quest, you can choose, or you decide you don't want to explore a side quest and continue adventure course. So, I'm not sure. Maybe we can explore once, but it says choose one. We can't choose multiple. We can attempt a bounty. Unintentional amount only comes with a single bounty, which is 2. So, and I think there might be a bounty of the new one they've got. I'm not sure, but we're gonna do Lola problems next. But it's gonna be a while before we do that, and that's because we're gonna put this on hold for now. Oh wait, I forgot. We need to sell something. How do we sell something in the story? Sell story. What is it we call it? Story round 13. 13. Building a store, page 13. Shop and train. But what about sell? Okay. Setting up. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's half what it's cost. But I am not seeing it here. We gotta figure that out. Ta-da-da-da. Counter rewards, story rounds, items and tiers. Sell an item. Here we go. It's a mundane item. Yep. So it's not unique. So we only get 5 gold for this, but that's fine. So we get 5 gold back. So we're at 9 gold. I think that's really good. The only accessories don't level up. So there's no better accessories. So that's why I'm trying to like buy them now because they cost more later. And so the only person who doesn't have an accessory is Rook. Nightingale has the cloak, which was gives her a free dodge, which is helpful. Zeke has too many belts, which has definitely been helpful. Now she has a quiver, so she gets more arrows. So let's go with 9. All right, and that's Middara. Next time we're gonna play some. I don't know. Probably either X-Men or Legendary Encounters. I'm probably going to be X-Men just because Legendary Encounters I haven't have all the soundtracks I wanted to use during it. I still have to get the original Alien soundtrack and then we'll put that together. So yeah, I'll see you next time. This has been really fun. And I completely forgot to say we'll play 1 or 2 of some single games and we'll go back to Dunwich, which I kind of want to play through the entire thing just because new character cards are coming out, and I want to organize all my cards, and I don't want to just basically get rid of my decks and rebuild them. So I want to like get through that, so then I can break it down, and then we'll come back to Middara. All right, thanks for watching this intermission. I'll see you later. Bye.